the World of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gomer, and I'm a podcast engineer here, and we're excited to bring you another episode of the SP Bridge Show with Suzanne Plumley, which we have here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. Um, and so, yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Suzanne to kick us off today.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SP Bridge Show. As we all know, there are so many people in our world that are telling you all about the traits of autism. We have people such as Paul Micallef out in Australia, and we have Sam Stein in the Netherlands, as well as Sarah Hendricks in the UK, and Temple Grandin and myself, and many, many others who are telling everybody about what the traits of autism are, and they are doing it on Facebook and on YouTube. The Aspie Bridge is more about helping those individuals who feel stuck and victimized in the neurodivergent forest, as I've started calling it, and feeling like their life is going to be what it is, and that there is no way, no recourse to change the way it is. And yet, I have to tell you that I thought that too. I had many ways that I thought my life was stuck. Back in 2018, I didn't think I was going any further than retail and my little life. And I had issues. I'm going to start off today with a story that I had heard from my mentor. And it's all about a time when Gandhi was out in the streets and he was giving out advice to people who would come from near and far to ask questions of the mighty Gandhi. And there was a mother and son who would jump on a train and take an 8 hour train to go and see Gandhi. And when they got up to their place in line where they could ask the question, the son had been having a trouble in eating too much sugar. Now, in this day and age, I guess this was a problem. But anyway, the mom felt it necessary to jump on an 8 hour train one way to go ask Gandhi how to get her son to stop eating sugar. And Gandhi looked at her with a kind smile and he said, "Come back in 2 weeks and I'll have the answer for you." And then she was very upset. She went home, waited the 2 weeks, and brought her son back and again on the 8 hour trip and got up in line and said to Gandhi, "How to tell my son to stop eating chocolate or eating sugar?" And Gandhi turned to the little boy with the kindest smile. He said, "Stop eating sugar." The mom was furious. She was like, "We just took two round trip, 16-hour train trips, and all you said was stop eating sugar?" And Gandhi said to her, "But you see, 2 weeks ago, I was eating sugar. And so for me to have my words be words of conviction, I had to stop eating sugar before I could tell your son to stop eating sugar." Now, what does that story have to do with today's topic on family healing? You see, 2 weeks ago, we had what was called the elephant in the room topic. You see, I have my own challenges with coming out of family struggle, my own challenges of dealing with a family that doesn't understand autism, nor do they believe that I am actually on the spectrum. After all, our families, if you're anywhere close to my age, our families have been living with us without having any label. If you want to call it a label, I don't like to call it a label. I like to call it an explanation. But our families have been living with us for so long that for us to finally say to them, "Oh, by the way, we learned that we're autistic," they don't take very well to that. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that I had my own struggles. The elephant in the room and how it relates to the Gandhi stories. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't ready to tell you about this important topic. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't even talk to you because I was still feeling that I had some unfinished business. So, like Gandhi went home and stopped eating sugar so he could tell the little boy to stop eating sugar, I had to prepare myself to talk to you in a very important way, but non-emotional way, so you could get the full understanding of this. So I stopped eating sugar too, if you want to have the relationship to that story. Now I'm ready to tell you about this. So, unfortunately, Wendy is not able to be with us today. Not, she is under the weather without a voice, as she told me. But she did leave behind some notes for me, and I will bring those up in a moment. First, I want to say to you, sometimes we look at our family through our own set of eyes. And what we see is not always the truth. It's just our perception of the truth. We may see family that criticizes us and gets angry at us and tells us that we're not something, or we're too much of this, or we're too much of that, or not enough of this, not enough of that. And they can't always find the words to say, I love you anyway. You're important to me. I love you anyway. For some reason, those words don't always come. Or when they do come, do we believe them? Because after hearing a string of what we perceive as criticism, it's very hard to hear, but I love you. Because we're like, but do you? Because you just gave me a whole bunch of criticisms about how I wasn't or how I was too much. And yet you're telling me I love you. It's hard for us to believe that that's the truth. And I like to say that if our families could go one step further and take it into an act of service and saying, let's sit down and talk further, or let's go have some ice cream and talk about this realistically, then maybe they're actually ready to have a deeper conversation. But just throwing out the words, I love you, is hard for us to take sometimes because we're not always sure how powerful those words are, or do we believe them? And sometimes our family members will not exactly be the most skillful people. I mean, they are humans after all, too, you know. And we do come into this world, all humans, all having our own lessons that we need to learn. And so we don't know what their package was when they came into Earth, or what their set of circumstances that they're dealing with. We don't live together 24/7. So we don't always know what they're dealing with. So they're not always going to be as skilled as we would like them to be either. And that doesn't excuse, however, people who will gaslight us and tell us that we're just not who we think we are, or that they're going to future break and say, well, when we get to this date, we'll do something. Or other ways of gaslighting. I know I didn't give you the best examples there, and I do recommend you look up gaslighting if you're not familiar with it. I'm going to keep going, but gaslighting is a term you may want to check out. And it's just a matter of saying, I'm not sure you can handle this. I think this is too much for you, or things like that. But I want to keep going here. Here's what Wendy says. When it comes to toxic family members, and not every family is toxic. Let's go back to what I was saying is it's what we perceive. Yes, there are some toxic families, but not every family is toxic, even if we think that they are. And I want to leave that up to individuals. I'm not going into it. But here's what she says about toxic family members. We want to remember that we deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. If someone gaslights us and makes us feel bad about who we are, we don't owe them time to stay there. Yeah, it's still your family, but that doesn't mean you have to stand in the same room and keep listening. You can go for a walk. You can go to another room and put on a set of headphones. We don't have to, we're not required to stand right there and listen to them disrespect us. Say, excuse me, I'm going. Uh, we don't we don't have to give them our time, no matter who they are, mother, father, sister, brother. aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. It doesn't matter who they are. We do not have to stand there and feel criticized and disrespected for who we are, what we believe, or who we say we are, such as being autistic. Yeah, I had to tell you, I had gone through high school, gone through college, and had two babies before autism was even known to be in females. Of course, our family didn't know what autism was. That didn't mean it didn't exist. It's just that the general public didn't understand what autism was. So the fact of them telling us that we're not autistic just because nobody else in the family was is not actually accurate because nobody understood autism at that point. Now, there are some of you who are younger who are listening to this and you did go to school or you were still in school around the time of 2008 when they were starting to see females coming up on the spectrum, in which case I'm hoping that you did get the proper care and the proper understanding from your family so that they could help you. We're more dealing with those of us who are later diagnosed, which means to me after the school years ended, and even after our undergraduate degrees ended, we found out that we were autistic. And we felt different all of our lives. It's not like all of a sudden we were autistic. We felt different, but there wasn't a term for it. We couldn't understand why we were losing friends. We couldn't understand why we couldn't understand the basic set of directions. It was not a term. Autism was not a term, especially for girls. And if you were anything like me, sitting in the corner wanting to read a book instead of going out on the gym field to play soccer just meant that we were quiet and introverted. We weren't autistic. So let's get back to what Wendy was saying here. If someone gaslights you or makes you feel bad about yourself, you don't owe them any time, no matter who they are. Self care sometimes means either reducing the time you spend with someone or removing them from your life altogether. That is what we call boundaries, creating healthy boundaries. Now, that can be difficult too, because if it's someone that you depend on for either monetary or living situation or something else, it's a little difficult to say to our family, I'm cutting you off. I'm not never going to see you again. That doesn't work. But what it does mean is reducing the amount of time that we spend with an individual that may bring our hearts harm. And what that also means is saying, okay, I can come visit you for an hour. We'll see how 2 hours goes, but I can't guarantee beyond that. I wouldn't say to them that, well, you're toxic and I can't stay with you for more than 2 hours. I leave that word completely out of your vocabulary. You would just say, I can come for an hour. Let's see how it goes. Maybe 2 hours. But it doesn't mean that you spend the same amount of time that you used to spend with them. You keep going on with your life. You do deserve to be treated with respect and not criticism. I think these are very important things to do and to know about. And that's why I say, someone who gaslights you and criticizes you, they're going to have their own human frailties, their own human vulnerabilities. So, what we see as toxic may not always be toxic, but that doesn't mean that you need to stick around to find out or call them out on it. That's the other important thing. Let's move on and talk about this. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever noticed, someone will blame you for something when deep in their heart, they're actually the ones who are feeling that. And if they weren't feeling it, how would they know to see it in you if they weren't feeling it themselves? So when someone goes and criticizes the way we do something, just say, they wouldn't notice that I was doing that unless they were doing it themselves. So that's kind of curious. So if you can say, maybe I'm just a mirror to their insecurities, let's just say that they are criticizing us on being overly flamboyant, or that's not a good word. Let's say overly organized. Let's just call it that. And then we go into their homes and things have to be in place. They're like OCD, they have to be in place. So maybe they're picking up on the fact that things have to be just so, and therefore, when you're doing that same act and they're calling you on it, maybe they're feeling insecure about them being overly that way themselves. I'm hoping that's clear. There are other examples. Maybe someone is an over planner, and when they see that you have to have every single detail of an activity planned, and they're like, man, there's no spontaneity here. Well, maybe they're experiencing that in their own lives. So we are all humans, we are all mirrors to each other. And we need to be aware that, oh, if I'm calling someone else on that, if I'm judging someone else on a particular act that we see as odd, different, unusual, or just, huh, questioning, we have to go inside ourselves and say, is that something I do too? Because so many times we wouldn't see it if we didn't know about it, if it wasn't inside of us. So the next time you're having a confrontation with someone in your family member, before you go and say something, say, huh, I wonder if I do that too. And then think of an example where you might do it, and it might just change the way you express it. Wow, I didn't know you do that too. That's kind of interesting. I find I do that all the time. When you say it like that, people come off the defensive. It's more of a curiosity. It's like, wow, I didn't know you like to line everything up like that too. Ah, that's in my home. Now, normally it's a little deeper than that. I get that. That's a very light subject. Let's just say, let's just use another example. Man, you just blow through money, don't you? Well, now maybe every time you go shopping with them, they don't think twice about spending money, and they just buy a lot of things too. Well, there are nicer ways of saying things like, oh, wow, I guess you enjoyed shopping today. I mean, that doesn't sound as bad, does it? And that kind of puts a little bit more fun into it. But I do understand that there are a lot deeper subjects. So I don't want you to think that I am making light of it because, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I have had some of my own struggles as well. And I'm going to go into that a little bit further. The next thing I want to talk about is when we feel invalidated or invisible. Now, sometimes because autism was not known back when I was a child, and I would get upset and I would have a temper tantrum. Oh, yeah, you always do that. You always get upset over that little thing. It wasn't that big of a deal. And yet it was to you. And that is a perfect case of being invalidated because they're making you feel like you're getting all upset over something that they don't perceive as a big deal. No one has the right to tell you how something should feel to you. Only you get to decide how something affects you. Now, how you respond to that is going to make a big deal. I'm sorry. Yes, it is. And this is why it's a big deal. You don't even have to say, I'm sorry. You have to say, yes, it is a big deal to me because. And, or you just say, excuse me, I need to go and get some fresh air right now. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to stand there and take it. You don't need to be invalidated. Now, here's the other thing that comes up. Let's just say that you're in a conversation and you don't know what's going on, and no one bothers to tell you what the conversation is about. No one bothers to catch you up or say, what do you think about this? Or how do you feel about this? They just pretend like you're not even there. They continue with the conversation and you could walk away and they wouldn't even notice. That would be feeling invisible. We all want to belong. We all want to go into a group and know that we can add something as long as we know what's going on. Now, I caution you, don't just jump in thinking you know what's going on. Observe. Go in and observe. Don't just jump in whatever you think is important. Give them a chance to catch you up on what the conversation is about. Then, if you've been standing there for about 15 minutes wanting to come in and no one even realizes that you have something to say, then you know what? That's when you might be feeling invisible. And you can find a time when they're all taking a breath and say, "Excuse me, may I add something?" But that feeling of being invalidated and invisible, they don't feel very good to us, do they? So I think sometimes we have to be a little proactive at that and say, in the case of invalidation, it is important to me and this is why. Or in the case of invisible, excuse me, I have something to add here. We can't just sit there and expect that people are always going to always include us. Maybe we don't know what's going on. Maybe we don't know the subject that they're talking about. In which case, just kind of move on to another group of people or go find something else to do. Not every subject are we going to know something about. And that's the important thing. When you get to a conversation within your family that's going on, and they haven't invited you into the conversation, say, do I really know enough about this conversation to add something to it? Not every conversation has to include us as long as it is not about us. That's a different story. If people are having a conversation and say, I don't know why she does that, she just is crazy. Well, now that's not appropriate. And I have to tell you that that's where some toxicity may come in, is when people feel the right to have a conversation about you, criticizing you, and you don't have an opportunity to stand your ground and explain why you do something or why you act in a particular way. That's not appropriate. That will never be appropriate. Nor is it appropriate for them to just ignore you completely. Act as if you're not even part of the family. That's not okay. That's really not okay. You have a right to belong to your family. And if they don't feel that you belong, well, then there are some things that you need to sit down with one member and say, I felt hurt because, and explain to them. Now, if they're going to start gaslighting you and saying, oh, it wasn't a big deal, it wasn't about you really, we just brought your name up, well, that's gaslighting. And you have a right to feel badly about that. But it's how you respond. Are you going to have a meltdown right then and there? Or are you going to walk away peacefully and just say, that's them? That's their unskilled version of themselves? I don't want to be a part of that right now. And these are some of the things that I had to learn. Yeah, 2 weeks I had to prepare for this podcast, but I went on a lot longer than that. Was how to walk away gracefully and understand it wasn't about me. It wasn't something I had done. They were unskilled to bring my name in it and then gaslight me and say it wasn't a big deal. That's not right. But that doesn't mean that I had to kick and scream and have a meltdown right then and there and say, that's not right. You shouldn't talk to me. Well, sometimes people get fueled up by that. And the more you get excited, the more they get excited. And it just escalates from there. And you don't want that to happen because that makes a mountain out of a molehill, as they say. A mountain out of a molehill means that you're making it even a bigger deal than it really is. Now, that doesn't include gaslighting. Okay, so there is a fine difference. Let's just say that let me give you an example here. She never does it's a conversation in your families. She never does the dishes. She never offers. She never comes into the kitchen at the end of the dinner to say, how can she help? And you go and say, I'm sorry, I was in the bathroom or whatever. And yet, you know what? If they say, but you never do it, you never do it, you always escape every time it comes time to cleaning up. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe you do escape. On the other hand, what if you go into the kitchen, you offer, and they get upset with the way you do things, the way you load the dishwasher, and they make a bigger issue out of it than just it's inappropriate to load the dishwasher that way. I don't know if dishwasher loading can be done wrong, but some people have a way of making that a bigger mountain than it really is. They could take the time and say, I like it done this way, or I like it done that way. But blowing up because you didn't load the dishwasher washer the way they like to do it is making a mountain out of a molehill. I hope you understand that. Let's go on. There are some people that have grown up in what is called the generational toxicity, which means that their parents talk to them this the way that they talk to you, their parents talk to them, and so forth, all the way up the chain of the into this ancestral. Let's just say grandpa got mad at mom and told her all these things that were inappropriate, and mom didn't learn how to do things differently. So mom turned around and did it to you. And then if you have kids and you turn around and do it to your kids, well, that's what they call generational toxicity. Does it mean that it's bad? It's all in the way we perceive it. Telling someone that they're terrible and they're no good at school and they're horrible and putting them down every chance that they come home from school, that's toxicity. But telling them that, well, one bad grade is not going to get you into college, that's not toxicity. That's just them being unskilled at being aware that something else may have been on your mind when you had that test, or when you went to college and you missed a class because your schedule was off and they get mad at you for skipping a class. That's a lot different than just quitting school and them having paid a lot of money for it. There are two different situations there entirely. So if they are regularly condescending, like there is nothing that you do right, and there was nothing that they did right in their family, and there was nothing, and it goes all the way up the ancestral chain, that would be called generational toxicity. But if a family member gets unskilled and says to you, I can't believe that you had a hard time with that class again, you always flunk that test, what is wrong with you? Well, if they did that once, then that's showing you that they're unskilled with the way they're handling it. If they do that every single day of your life, that is the toxicity. And I hope you put in the comments if you agree or disagree, because I think it's very important that I know that you're understanding what is being said. Everyday criticism, picking apart something that's not right about you, is toxic. Having an isolated case where you may not have performed at your best and they call you on it, and without understanding why it happened, they just got mad at you because it happened. That's not toxicity, that's unskilled behavior. And let's go on to the next part, because I think before I go there, is it a fact or a myth that there's just generational toxicity? There is a fact if the family member is coming to you every day with a criticism. It's a myth that every family is toxic if they criticize. There's going to be some unskilled behavior in your family, and that's hard. I know. I understand that. But if it's not an everyday occurrence for every single thing you do, it's not toxic. It's just something that they spotted that you did wrong, that they felt the need to criticize you about. One thing is not everything. Everything is toxic. One thing once in a while is unskilled. And I hope you understand the big difference there. Let's go on to protection or controlling. Now, I have to say, this is something that hits very close to home for me. And protection is them making sure that you are aware of what your capabilities are and making sure that you're not getting in over your head. Meaning, should you be spending $50,000 on a car if you work at a retail job? That would be a little bit of protecting. Should you be jumping into the deep end of the swimming pool if you haven't learned how to swim yet? That's another case of protection. Should you be driving a large vehicle if you've only been driving little cars? These are all examples of protection. Now let's go into the idea of controlling. You can't drive that truck. You've never driven that truck, and I don't understand why you're going to try now. Or you've never driven that far. You always have problems. Why are you going to take a road trip? Or there are so many different ways that a family can do that. You can't go on vacation because you don't make enough money. That was a big one. Do I not deserve to have a vacation just because I work the job I work? That would be a little bit more controlling. Do I not deserve to go on a road trip or try something new just because I've never tried it before? That would be more controlling. Yeah, they may see it as protection, but it's the way that it is aired as to whether or not it was protection or if it was controlling. When they start with a you never, or you shouldn't, or you you just can't do that. You can't do that. That is more of a controlling voice. But if someone questions you is, are you sure you should be, let me rephrase that. Are you sure that this is smart if you invest this kind of money when you don't have it? Well, they want to protect you. And that doesn't mean we're always going to listen. I can tell you that right now, but they are protecting you. So let's go over that. Protection is when they ask you of taking a major step in your life when you haven't built up to that step is smart. That is protection. Just as I said with the swimming pool, are you sure you should be diving off that high dive or jumping off that high dive if you don't know how to swim yet? Perfect case of protection. In the case of controlling, you shouldn't be jumping off that diving board. You have no business jumping off that diving board because you can't swim. See the difference? I know that that's a little bit easier for you to understand. Try and find some other cases. And if you can't, I can help you find those. But it's the way they come at you with these words. You can't. You shouldn't. It's not right. You can't and you shouldn't are the best ways that they will start it. You can't and you shouldn't. Let's go on to the next one. Self-empowerment. Let's go back to where I was just saying. You may take their advice, especially when they're protecting you, not when they're controlling you. You may take their advice and say, I'll take it under advisement, but it's still your life. It's still your life. And if you want to take that risk as an adult, you need to make sure that you have plans to back it up. I was not always that skilled in that. And we with Aspies, with um, with our executive functioning need some more education on how to deal with that, not criticism. And that's a big thing right there. Education. Let me help you find a way to do this so that you don't get yourself in trouble. And that would be a far better way for your family to be more supportive. Let's find a way to do this together. Or let me help you create a plan so you can do this. Or let me see if we can create the steps that would be necessary for you to do it without getting yourself in trouble. Whenever a family member offers to help you, that is the sure sign that they really are supportive. And accept that, receive it. I know in the past they may have been feeling like they have been unskilled. You may have been feeling they're unskilled. But if they're making a valiant effort to try to help, try to receive it. I had that just come up this a couple of days ago. And I'm like, thank you. I appreciate your help. I appreciate your support. It's very important to me that I appreciate them and they appreciate me. That is the gift of receiving and giving and receiving. If they're making an effort to come back around again, to really see how your life is turning out, then that's not a bad thing. And you can receive help. Don't get all high and say, well, they didn't help me before. They're not going to help me again. No, no. If you want to get back to having a relationship with that family member, or at least bringing it back to neutral from, let's say you have not been speaking to them and they make a step forward to help you and then bring it back to neutral and they're trying to help you, you need to receive it. It shows that they really want to help you and you're willing to let them help you. Now, you're going to still be careful right there and say, I have it from here, or thank you, I looked into that, or some other things. But try and let them do what they can to support you. That's very important to bring those healing back together again. And I think that's important that if someone decides that, well, this has not been working in our life up until now, we're estranged, let me see what I can do to make this situation better, and they offer to do something, let them. See where it goes. See where it goes. Because you know what? That is going to make your family tie a lot stronger. It really is. People who really want to try and turn around their action steps, see where it goes. If they are just saying it and then nothing comes of it, well, then you know that the words may be empty, that they were just saying it to give false support. I don't think in my case that this is false support, and I appreciate that. But when you have words, just like I said, the I love you, and there's no action step that comes after it, that's when they're just gaslighting you or future faking you. But if you have someone who says, I'd like to help you do this, and they do it, then that's something to be appreciated and something to feel really good at. Okay, so self empowerment is all about getting to the bridge and deciding what you want to do with your life and going after it. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. Don't wait for someone to tell you you can do this. Don't wait for someone to say you're allowed or give you permission. You don't need permission. Whether or not it's right or wrong, you'll find out. You'll get feedback. Remember, failure is not failure. It's just feedback. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try something else. But if you don't try it on your own and you wait for someone to give you permission, then you're still under their control. But if you say, you know what, this is what I want to do, I'm going to go after it, I may take the right steps, I may take the wrong steps. Now, if someone in your family says, yes, but let me help you make the right steps, by all means, see what they can do to help you. But don't jump down their throat if they stop there. It's their unskilled way of doing things. They think that just by saying the words that that's going to be supportive. But if they take the action steps, then you know that they truly care. They want to be there for you. They want to turn things around and make the family relationship better. So, there is a time and a place when we know that our family is just not quite on the same page that we're on. And there may be a time that you need to find other family members or within your own family or outside of your family that can be a safe place for you to land when you do feel pain by something that's said in your family. A safe place to land is knowing that you don't have to filter your language, that you don't have to change the way you say things without them taking offense. A safe place to land means that you can go and vent, and someone's not going to jump down your throat and say, but you shouldn't have done it that way. A safe place to land is someone who listens, someone who really says, I know how you feel. I know that this can be a hard time for you. Let's see how I can make you feel better about the situation. That's a safe place to land. Knowing that you can go to a person, such as a role model, a surrogate parent, a best friend, or someone outside of your family and say what's on your mind to release it. Because, yes, you do need to release it. You can't keep it bottled up. You're just going to implode. um, Not actually implode. You are going to feel like you are just going to start to put on a coat of armor and you're going to protect yourself. And that's not good either. You need to find a set of friends or a surrogate parent or a role model that you can go to and just release. And that's important. And I had to do that myself. There is another story that my mentor tells me that when you get upset with one person, try and find another person that you can kind of really gravitate over to, and you have such a strong bond with them that what happens is that over time you start to feel that overall love, and you can see all people like that. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to bring it together the next day. It means that for a little while you need to find an alternative role model that you can go to on a regular basis that you feel comfortable just releasing with. And over time, when you start to build up that confidence and that love again, you're able to see people with a whole new set of eyes. And that's important. Now, let's go into this last thing. Compassion is the key to finding your healthy path onward. Now, do you know the story of every single family member? Do you know their past? Do you know what problems they're dealing with on a daily basis? No, none of us do. We don't live their lives, we only live our own life. We can't possibly know every problem that every person in our family has dealt with, that's their own childhood, has dealt with currently, has dealt with in their careers, in the neighborhood. We can't possibly know that. We are one person. We cannot know everybody's story. So, what we need to know is that there is a level of compassion where we say, okay, maybe they're like this because they've had a hard time with it themselves. Goes back to that mirror issue, doesn't it? Where we say that perhaps they have been dealing this with themselves and they think they know best if we have a similar situation. Well, they don't know what our life is like. We don't know what their life is like. We need to have compassion on both sides. They need to have the compassion that we have our own set of challenges. We need to have compassion that they have come from a background where they have been pained. And when that happens, when we can be compassionate to their being unskillful as family members, it's a little bit easier for us to forgive them because now it's not about us. It's about the story that they've been living. And how they respond to us may be skilled or unskilled. How they react to a similar situation that we're going through can tell you a lot about where their pains are in their own childhood, where their pains are. And I've come to know some of them in my own family. We're not going to go through this now. For me, I know where my stories are, and I know that I've gotten to be more compassionate about what my family members are going through. And I advise that for you to think about what your family members are going through. And do they think that they can help you by bringing your situation in? Now, I'll tell you one thing, and we do this a lot. You can get to a situation with a family member and say, "Oh yeah, I had that story too. Let me tell you all about it." Well, don't go into your story unless they say to you, "Really, tell me about it. How did you work through the story?" Wait for the invitation to tell your story. Don't jump right into it. There's nothing more challenging to a problem in someone's life than if someone else jumps in and hijacks with their own story. Now, that's different than if they say, "Really? How is your story similar to mine? Can you tell me about it?" As soon as they invite you to tell them about your story and how you solved it, well, then that's when you have permission to tell your story. But don't just jump into it. Otherwise, you just need to have the compassion that their problems are very important to them. Just like the gaslighting, it's important to them. Don't dismiss it and don't put it down because you don't want your problems dismissed or put down either. So, I'd like to finish off with a quote today. And this is by Wayne Dyer. And it is all about, let me pull it up here for you. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And what that means is look at each of your family members through a new set of eyes. Look at them and say, what is their story? What is this reason why they have decided that they feel the right to tell us something? Look at them more compassionately. Look at them and say, I wonder what the story is that they are responding to me in this very hurtful way. Maybe if they're calm, you can say, tell me more. Tell me about your situation. I love the words, tell me more. It gives you a way to get to know that family member a lot better. And I honestly believe that compassion is the key to getting to a healing place in your family where you're not estranged. Will you ever be completely at the highest level of love and joy? That's going to take time and it's going to take family members wanting to change. But if you can change the way you look at them, the way you look at them, let me read that again. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, which will go in to mean that if you look at each family member through the eyes of love and ask them about their story, maybe you'll understand them better. And then all of a sudden, something exciting happens. You start to see the whole situation a lot different. And that is how I've come to really start to work my way back to where my pains were. I'm now getting my family members who are validating my challenges. They're understanding that they can help me in different ways that they haven't considered before. And am I appreciative? You bet I am. So try that on. See if you can change the way you look at your challenging family connections, your challenging family relationships, and just ask them about their story. You'll be very surprised at what will happen. And for now, I want to say next month we start Freedom Month, and I call that finding healthy ways to purge bad habits. Bad habits can be the way we feel about things, it can be habits that we actually have that we want to get rid of. And I have Teresa Garvin coming in next month, which is Thriving Family Dynamics, which would be a great continuation to today, where she'll help us to maybe get rid of some of those family habits that sneak in, the jabs, the hitting the buttons on a family member that may not be so funny to them, but you think is hilarious. So I want to tell you, come back next week and learn some of the ways that we can really start to get rid of some of those family habits that we think are funny, but the person that we're doing it to doesn't think they're so funny. So I want to say thank you for coming today. And I hope I'll see you next Tuesday, July 2nd. And this will be a perfect lead in for when you go to celebrate your family 4th of July if you're here in the USA. And this beginning of your summer or winter with your families if you're in different parts of the world. So I want to say thank you for coming today, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.